available to me here to carry out my research at CUG are excellent. The laboratories are extremely well resourced and well funded, and I work with a team of very motivated graduate students on a range of problems related to paleoclimate. In the laboratories here, we can carry out cutting-edge research which tells us exactly what happened during these time intervals.
I'm Tim Keski, Professor of Geology and Director of the Center for Global Tectonics at China University of Geoscience in Wuhan. We focus on the early evolution of the Earth in the Precambrian, the structure of orogenic belts, and deep subduction through time, ranging from active tectonics in Turkey to Proterozoic supercontinents and the evolution of the Arabian-Nubian Shield to the early Archean evolution of continental crust in China, Canada, Greenland, Africa, Australia, many other places. We welcome you to join us at CUG Wuhan.
作为教育部直属全国重点大学，国家批准设立研究生院的大学，国家211工程，国家双一流建设高校，地大围绕学科前沿和经济社会发展的需求，积极构建以地球科学为主导、多学科相互支撑、协调发展的学科生态系统。地大热忱期盼莘莘学子到来，共同踏上建设地球科学领域国际知名研究型大学的新征程。聆听先生之言，与真理为伴，我们在地大等你。它是受风雨洗礼、沧桑岁月雕刻过的学校，它是受悠然岁月、浓郁书香浸润出来的学校，它终成参天大树，反哺华夏，誉满全球。地学文化凝结在黄金时代，峥嵘岁月雕刻出巍巍学府。它就是中国地质大学，以报国之志谱写青春之歌。历经沧桑，辗转办学，唯有底蕴深厚，方能挺立潮头。大学立身之本，在于立德树人。
每一次遇见，都是一种缘分。最珍贵的，莫过于遇到良师益友。到地大，这里有导师鼓励你直挂云帆济沧海，有导师指导你柳暗花明又一村，有导师教诲你惠荡济水3000里。
地大坚持弘扬艰苦朴素、求真务实校训精神，坚持弘扬严在地大的校风学风，坚持弘扬谋求人与自然和谐发展的价值观。浩瀚星空中镌刻着他们的名字，万丈高峰上留下过他们的脚印，大国崛起伴随着他们的身影。怎样为学为人？先生们的教诲既是对自己人生的总结，也是对未来学子的期盼。
人生的价值在于奉献，人生的乐趣在于发现，人生的阅历在于实践，人生的品味在于磨练。
追求人生事业和科学真理的时候，要只争朝夕；自学的时候，搞教学、搞科研，切记急功近利，一定要踏踏实实的干。
我们学校里头杰出的校友温家宝同志，在同济大学上空也曾经希望大家应该仰望天空，要思索未来。在黑格尔有句名话：一个民族不仰望天空，是一个没有希望的民族。
地大积极开展对外学术、科技和文化交流，与美国、法国、澳大利亚、俄罗斯等国家的100多所大学开展签订了友好合作。 2012年发起成立地球科学国际大学联盟，与斯坦福大学、牛津大学等12所世界知名大学自
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at the Silk Road Forum 2024-25. First, I would like to thank COG and International Student College and teachers for organizing the Silk Road Forum and giving us the opportunity to listen to the valuable lectures from our seniors like Dr. Masood Rahman and learn how to write research papers and our thesis. Now, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Masood Rahman. Dr. Masood Rahman completed his doctoral degree in marine sciences from China University of Geosciences in 2023. Currently, he is a postdoctoral researcher at the Institute for Advanced Marine Research, COG, Guangzhou. His research is focused on paleoceanography and paleoclimate of Asia, particularly South China Sea and Australia, specifically offshore Australia. Till date, Dr. Masood Rahman published more than 15 research articles in various T1, T2, and T3 journals. Along with that, Dr. Masood Rahman published 3 conference proceedings. In addition, Dr. Masood Rahman served as a reviewer for more than 10 reputed SCI journals. Today, the Silk Road Forum title is Developing a Rigorous and Impactful Research Approach, a Path Towards High Quality Publication and Successful Thesis Review. Please join me welcoming Dr. Masood Rahman to give us the lecture.
Thank you so much, Kashif, for your kind words, and thank you everyone, and good evening. Thank you everyone for coming here and joining us for this today talk. The title of my talk is today Developing a Rigorous and Impactful Research Approach, a Path Towards High Quality Publication and Successful Thesis Review. The basic aim of this today talk is to equip you guys with how to do the research and the basic concept of the research and the different elements and the process of the research, and as well as the write-up of the research, especially the research article and research thesis. The content of my today presentation is what is research, the basic concept of the research. Whenever we are doing the research, so it's very necessary that we have the basic concept of the research. And then the next stage is the research write-up. And then another important thing which I noticed since 2 or 3 years, and particularly in our CUG and even in the different places, that most of the students cannot differentiate between the research article and research thesis. Of course they can, like both are different. One is the qualification for a degree, another is journal articles, but they believe in the different ways. So this is also one of the important content of my research, my presentation today. Last and not the least, the most important one is the research ethics. So I would like to start from what is the research. Research refers to the systematic process of investigating a specific topic, phenomena, or problem to generate knowledge, insight, or understanding. It involves the collecting, organizing, and analyzing evidences to increase the understanding of a topic, characterized by particular attentiveness to control the source of bias and error. It is very clear from the basic definition of the research that we must generate some piece of knowledge, or we should investigate a specific topic, a specific phenomena. These are mainly a very main question arising among the students and even the researcher, that our thesis, our paper are rejecting because the editor is not satisfied with the novelty or the work which he did or she did. Here in the definition of the research, the basic, my aim is to introduce you the research that it must generate some knowledge. It should be not already existing knowledge. It should generate something. So this is the basic definition of the research, that whenever we are doing the research, so it generates some kind of knowledge. It improves some knowledge. Let me explain it step by step. We have different elements of research in which the systematic inquiry, knowledge generation, incremental advancement, objectivity and consistency, and dissemination and impact. The number one, the research must be in a systematic way. Like we cannot start from the methodology, or we cannot start from the results and come to the methodology, or we cannot do the analysis and after that we cannot find the research problem. If we are going, and most of the time, especially the master student are doing like this, then they first do the analysis and then they are finding the research gap, which is the basic mistake in a research. At the end of the day, a thesis or paper is being rejected. Because first of all, you have to do a systematic way. First of all, you have to define the problem. Then you have to do the research methodology, find the methodology. I will explain it one by one later on. Another important thing is knowledge generation. It must generate some piece of knowledge, as I earlier said. It should be not just the existing knowledge. At the level of undergraduate, maybe the bachelor level, it's maybe okay that if you are doing some case study, but master and PhD level, it must be some improvement in already existing literature or problem. Incremental advancement, it must be, it adds some knowledge to the previous one. It should be advanced than the previous one. And it should be consistent, and it should be objectively. It should be in the specific objectives, and it should be consistent. There should be no contradiction in your research. Dissemination and impact, it must have some significances. It has some impact, like you are doing a research, but what is impact? What is its significances for the people? So these are the basic element of a research. Whenever we keep in mind this element in the research and we start our research, so at the end of the day, if your research is not a very good one, so it will be not even below the limit which will be rejected. It must have some specific level. Another important thing which I noticed in the last many Silk Road forums, and even I saw it like in the many thesis review in the CUG and outside the CUG and the papers, that what the novelty. The lack of the novelty is the basic problem in the research articles and as well as in the thesis. So we are generally listening the definition of the novelty. But how to determine the novelty, how to enhance the novelty, how to find the novelty, these are the basic questions. So today in this talk, I included these questions as well. So let's start from the definition of the novelty. Novelty refers to the originality, uniqueness, and innovation nature of research study or its finding. It is the fundamental principle for the high quality, impactful research that advance the current state of knowledge in a field. So novelty is basically, as we listen this definition too many times, it is originality or uniqueness. It will advance the previous existing knowledge. But how to determine the novelty, how to find the novelty, how to enhance the novelty, this is the basic question. So let's come to the next one. How to find the novelty? It is impossible that we not review the previous literature and we find some novelty. So the first and important step is we should review the previous literature and we find out an unexplored research question or phenomena which is unresolved. It may be theoretical approach or maybe methodological approach. Or we should find some unexpected results, findings, which challenge the previous one, the already existing one. These findings should be challenge the previous one, the already existing knowledge in that field. Synthesizing the disparate aspect of the research in an innovative way. Like previously some work is available, but you adopt a new way. And that new way must be better than the previous one. That is also novelty. Or develop a novel conceptual model or framework. Like nowadays we are using the deep learning and machine learning. So if a work is available in the normal way someone did in the normal softwares, you can use that data by using the machine learning or deep learning to provide a new conceptual model. This is the novelty. Up to this level, even we listen a lot of time that these are also including in the basic definition of novelty. But come to next point at how to enhance the novelty. Like you have some question in your mind, but how you can enhance that novelty. So the first point, if you want to enhance the novelty in our research, so we should adopt the interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary approach. Like in our research, which is maybe focused on in the geosciences, we can help from the computer sciences, we can collaborate with them, we can use the machine learning, deep learning, we can use the GIS, remote sensing. So the work which is previously available just based on the isotopes or maybe in the petrography or the geochemistry, we can enhance that by using the GIS or remote sensing or something else. We can identify the emerging trends, that what is the current problems, and by adopting those, by keep in mind those emerging trends, we can improve our work with the current trends. And another important thing, if you want that your work should innovate you must be in touch with the latest literature. And ResearchGate is the one of the most, I think so, the useful app that you can every day can find the research article which is published in your research field. So you must know about the latest literature. The another thing, the important thing, that for the novelty, that you should critically evaluate your own assumptions. There may be something in the literature, they're saying one thing, but what is your assumptions? So you critically evaluate your assumption, and you can do experiment on your assumption, then you can lead to some new findings. So this is also a way to enhance your novelty. Here, the last one, the unexplored discoveries and open unexpected findings. Like something is even no one touched it before, this is just a new discovery, which is quite difficult at master reach this level, but you can do it. Many people can do it. And identify a novelty. Like how to identify the novelty, so you can conduct a literature review, and then you can propose like a study, which like you can find a research gap in the literature, and you can propose a study which will enhance the previously existing models, theories, and you can then explain the uniqueness of that your own assumption or proposed study, and highlighted the expected findings, which will add some knowledge to the already previous knowledge. This I will just go through this slide, but this is very important for one thing, like the types of research. It is very important if someone is doing and starting the research, he must know about what kind of research he is doing. Like these are different types. This is, I just mentioned 10, but more than 10 there are the types of research. So it's very important that if you are doing the research, so you must know what kind of research you are doing. Why it is important to know? Because whenever you are doing a research, so when you are framing your introduction section, your title and your methodology, your results and your conclusion, discussion and conclusion, so the basic body of your thesis or article should not contradict. It should be focused on one objective. Either it is qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods, both. Which one? It should be not like your introduction is qualitative, your result are quantitative, your discussion is mixed, and the final conclusion is again qualitative or quantitative. So you must know that what kind of working I am doing. So you should frame your whole manuscript or thesis in that kind of research. Research process, we have same like we have the research elements, so we have a complete research process. So the research process is a systematic and organized approach followed the researcher to investigate a specific topic. It involves identifying research question, reviewing relevant literature, designing the study, collecting, analyzing data, interpreting the results, and drawing the conclusion. So let me come to this point to discuss in the detail. Define the research problem. Conduct. These two can be read together. Like to define the research problem, it is not possible without literature review. So you should literature review and then you define a research problem, which is we can call in another way the research gap. Then you have to develop a research plan. Develop a research plan in methodology. Now you find a research gap, but how I should fill this research gap? So you should think about the methodology, that what kind of methodology I will adopt to achieve these objectives and fill this research gap. The number 4 is collecting and analyze the data. You have a methodology now in mind, you have a research gap in your mind, but now you need some data to analyze that data and get your results. Then the next stage, you have 3 stages. You have gap, you have methodology, you have data. Now the interpretation of that data. And finally the presentation. If you have all the things, but if your presentation is not good, so no one will accept that research. The presentation is very important. Now I will explain one by one. Research problem is a statement about the area of concern, a condition to be improved, difficulty to be eliminated, or troubling question that exists in the scholarly literature. Too many times I explained this, so I will not repeat it. Simply, the research problem is the research gap, which we define in the literature. Develop a research plan. This is, in general term, you can call a proposal. So we should define the purpose of this project. Why I am doing this? What is the why it is required? Why I am doing this? Then the important things to develop a research plan is the objectives, what you will do. Another one, how you will do, the methodology, and what will be the achievement. And the important thing, especially for a thesis, that you must have the time frame, in which time I will do which thing. The time is very important. So you will also define, you will also keep in your mind that what is the time and how much time I will do this. And also you should be keep in your mind that determine how to present your results. This should be also the part of the research plan. Now we have two kinds of data. One is primary data and one is secondary data. I'm telling you these things because these are very important. And recently I saw some students, they are stuck in kind of data. What is the advantages and disadvantages of these data? Whenever you are starting your research, so most of the time your professor will offer you both data. That if you want to do work on some samples or something like field work, whatever is your field. And another one, they will tell you, I have some data from this place, and if you want to, you can do work on this. Most of the time, the professor offer you two kind of data. So now both have some advantages and disadvantages. So whenever you are starting your research, so you must be keep in your mind that what kind of data I am adopting and what will be the consequences. So this is very important. The primary data is basically data which you collected by your own. This is first-handed data. This I will explain that how you can do this. And the secondary data is a kind of information which is already gathered by someone else, but you are using that. It has also a lot of limitation and also have some good points as well. So now I'm explaining this bit. Primary data you can develop by some analysis, surveys, observation, experiment, etc. This is your own data. You can do it in the lab and you can do in some kind of the computer work, like whatever, but this is the data which is limited to you. But we have some problems related to the primary data. The number one thing, that time and resources. You have enough time to generate your own data, and resources mean like the lab facilities and as well as the expenditure that you will spend some money on this gathering the gathering of this data. So do you have this or not? This is the number one thing. Another one, ensuring the reliability and validity of the data. You will collect the data, but what will be the validation of that data? It will be valid, it will be good enough to publish somewhere in good places, or it will fulfill the requirement of your thesis. This is another problem. Potential bias, like sometime we have the bias, like if I in the management sciences and that field, so we have a lot of biases in the data collection, like ethnic bias, area, region, a lot of things are there. We have the bias as well, and the ethical consideration of the data. Like that data is allowed to be published. Like in many journals nowadays, you have to, first of all, you have to acknowledge, to explain that I collected this data from the animal, there is no danger to the animal and human, a lot of things are there. So these some ethical, research ethics are also involved. And the data is consistent or inconsistent, the standard, the lack of training, this is the most important thing. If you have the resources, you have the time, but you are not well trained to collect that data. So this is another problem. Like you can come every day to the lab, you have all the equipment, but you cannot collect the data. So the training for the collection of the data is also very important. Same in the other fields, if you go out, you want to do the interviews or you want to do some field work, but if you don't have the training that how to collect or how to interview or how to do the survey, so you cannot collect the data. So the training is also a very important thing. And finally, as I told you earlier, the lack of the quality assurance. What is the quality of your data which you collected? So these are the important things that you must be keep in your mind whenever you are starting the research, that I should choose the primary data or not. If there is no problem in these kind of problems, so you can choose the primary data. Otherwise, you can go to the secondary. But if you are going to secondary data, so secondary data also have some limitations. So you must keep in mind these problems as well. So the secondary data, it is available mostly nowadays on the internet, the government and non-government organization agencies, public libraries, educational institute, commercial information sources like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, IMF, a lot of places offering the data. But there are some problem as well with the secondary data. Like the availability of the data, you have a research gap, but the data is available or not available. Like in the public domain, it is available or not available. The another one, the control of the data, you have no control on that data. Whatever they collected, you have to use same as it is. So this is another problem. The potential data with the data accuracy. He may be explained in the data that we have some inconsistency and the data is accurate up to this limit, 90%, 80%, 75%. So now you have to think about that how much accurate data do you need according to your research problem and your objectives. Alignment with the current research objective, what you are doing, the data is can fulfill your research gap or not. And ethical consideration, sometimes the data is not available in the public domain. So sometimes you can get the data, but you cannot use it. This is another problem. And the validating the secondary data, this is another very important thing, that who collected this data. Because the person is also matter, because there must be some bias, and maybe there is some bias of the participant. Would there be any reason for purposely misinterpreting the facts? As I told you before, like the bias, there's ethnics, there's the region, religion, a lot of things are involved. So this is the validation, as also the secondary data is the problem. For what purpose were the data were collected? What was the, like your objectives may be different from the another one. You may be, the data is same, but what was his objective and what is your objective? So this is also a very big concern. How were the data collected? Maybe you have another methodology in your mind and he collected data from another methodology. And that methodology from which who collected the data maybe not fulfill your requirement. So you should think about this whenever you are adopting some secondary data. And the last one, the data is internally consistent and logical. This is important thing, the accuracy of the data. So whenever you are choosing the primary or secondary data, so you must keep in mind that can I fulfill my requirements or not? It can fulfill the requirements of my research article and thesis or not. I will give you another example here, like if you are getting some data from the oil and gas companies, so maybe they allow you to do your thesis, but you cannot publish it. So you will write a very good thesis, but you will have no publication. Then how you will fulfill the requirement of your degree? So you must be keep in mind these all the things. Analyzing the research data. So you have to first of all write your hypothesis, your assumptions, And then you have to collect the data, as I told you about the secondary and primary. Summarize your data with the descriptive statistics. First of all, you need to do some basic statistic of your data. Test hypothesis and make elements with the informal statistics, and then interpret your results. I will later on tell you that how it makes the difference between the two kind of interpretations. This is very important. Sometimes we have a very good data, but our interpretation are weak. Our presentation is weak. So it's make a lot of gap. Now I will come to the research write-ups. In the research write-ups, we have, like, if we consider the chapter of the thesis or a research article. So we have some common thing. Maybe in the research thesis, we don't have separate conclusion and abstract, and maybe methodology chapter is also together. But the rest of all, the title, introduction, and result, discussion, they are common in the research article and research thesis chapters. So we have to discuss it one by one. The research title of any article, it must be descriptive, it should be direct, accurate, appropriate, interesting, concise, precise, unique, and should be not misleading. Sometimes we have a very good research article, but our title is not directly represent our findings, or sometimes it is very lengthy, it's not concise. And even recently, I not added in my presentation because it was confidential. I reviewed one article, and the title of the article was like misleading. They mention a lot of things, like we did some very specific and very big objective in their work, but actually it was not present in the research article. So whenever your research article have this kind of thing, the editor and reviewer sometime logically and sometime in anger they reject your paper, even in your thesis, because he believe that like you are making fool the other people. Like a thing is not present in your thesis or research article, why you are mentioning that thing in your title? Because if someone want to read your thesis or paper, they first of all they read the title. So the title is very important, and it should be broad but concise, and it should represent the findings of your study. I will give you some examples. This is one of my recent paper I published. So you can see this is maybe 1.5 line, and we combine a lot of things into a very short sentence. Like I use the term chronostratigraphy. So we did a lot of things, but just combine these all into the one chronostratigraphy. Like we did 3-4 kind of age dating, like carbon dating, isotopes dating. So we combine these all into only one chronostratigraphy. Then in the biostratigraphy, I use the term biostratigraphy. In the biostratigraphy, I at least use 4 types of biostratigraphy. But I just combine into the one. And another one, like you can see this implication for the global correlation. So it's showing a very broad thing. If you did the global correlation, but it is not present in your title, so the editor will think this is just a normal paper. If I remove this implication part of global correlation, so this paper was published in the T1 journal, it may be not even published in T4. But the important thing here is the global correlation. So this is very important, that how is your title? Your title reflect your findings or not? The reflection of your finding is only not meaning that it have all of the thing whatever you did. No, there is something not missing from your findings. which may be very important for your publication. Another one, like you can see, this is another Q1 journal, and this is again 1.5 line, but it have everything whatever is in my findings. Similarly, another one. So it not necessarily that your title is very lengthy and it is very, like you say a lot of things. No, it should be concise and accurate. Introduction section is the backbone of any research. Very important. Like you can see here a V kind of shape. I will tell you how to do. Like initially you need to provide some background that what is known globally and locally. But if you look to this one, so you should start from the broader level, from the higher level. Then you will come to the, and that already existing knowledge, what is known, you will find a research gap in the introduction section of your thesis and paper, that what is unknown. Then you will come to define like what is your objectives, what is unknown and what is your objectives. One thing you should be keep in mind, a single research gap is not novelty. Your objective basically defines the novelty. How? Like there's a lot of problem, like many diseases which we believe that they have no treatment. But if you just write down some literature and say that this is the gap, there is no literature available or no treatment is available, so this is not novelty. You also have to write down what we can do to fill this gap. So that is novelty. So your objective is very important. Then not in detail but in short, in 1 or 2 or 3 lines, you also introduce your methodology. That what is already known, what is unknown, what is your objectives and their significances, scope, and what way you will adapt to achieve your objectives, and then you will just summarize and then conclude. This is a proper introduction. So if you starting from the small thing and going towards the big, so it's confusing. So you should start from the broader and then you should come to the smaller one and you just squeeze it. So this is the proper structure of introduction. And most of the time the editor, they just go through your result discussion and other things. They just read your discussion, that what is your research gap, what method you use, etc. Like this is the one of the paper which I review. I just put an example, like I give the different colors. Like you can see the different colors. They write down some sentences, but these sentences have no connectivity with each other. It is not connected with each other. They started from the smaller, then come to the broader, and then again to the smaller and broader, and one place, another place. So it is not consistent. So you must be like consistent in your introduction. Methodology is the most important thing, a component or element of research. Your methodology defines your research, the validation of your research, that how much impactful is your research. Sometimes you do the same research which we publish somewhere in the local journal or some kind of normal journals, but our methodology is weak. If our methodology is strong, so the same paper I saw personally in the Nature and Science as well. Like recently I saw one paper which was in some kind of faulting in Pakistan, Peshawar, which was published in a local journal. The same data which recently you guys saw that There was one Chinese student who published in the Nature. When I read the both paper, it was almost a similar data they use, but the method was different. So your methodology basically outline the impact of your research. Methodology is very important. One thing I'm telling you, if a editor or reviewer find a problem in your introduction, your title, in your discussion, conclusion, so he maybe gave you some suggestion, and maybe you can recover it, even in the presentation, table, figures. But if your methodology is wrong, so your research is straight away rejected. And then you have to do all the analysis again. So it's very important that how is your methodology. It's basically outline the research design, that how you did your research, describe the sampling and participants. These are the part of the methodology. You must be incorporated in your methodology section, whether it's paper or thesis. And discuss the data collection procedure and how you collected the data. This is a very important thing. You should not keep the reviewer and editor in doubt. Like, you have data, but how you collected, you not mentioned it. So you must describe this. Explain the data analysis technique, what kind of technique you use for the data collection. This is also very important. What kind of machine you use, where you did your field, what survey or whatever you did. So you also explain the techniques. Ethical consideration. If there is some ethical issue, you must be mentioned. If you mention it, up to the level of my understanding, no problem. But if the reviewer or editor find that issue, then this is problem. And sometimes these ethical issues are very problematic beyond your rejection of the paper. It is more dangerous for our whole career. Establish validity and reliability. When you how you did, I will tell you later on that how you can validate your data. And acknowledge the limitation. Nowadays, this is very important thing. Recently, I reviewed too many papers for the ACI journal, and they asking the author mentioned the limitation in their work or not. They are specifically asking this question, some journals, that the author mentioned the limitation of the work or not. If there is any limitation in your data, so you can mention that in your methodology. That my resolution, the sample resolution is low. We had that problem, like you can explain it by your own self. And should be clear and concise. Now I will give you some examples. Like this is one of the paper I review. This person haven't did any mapping in the area, but he mentioned in the methodology section that I did mapping. There was no mapping in the area, but he said this is misleading. Again, there is a lot of contradiction in the methodology. You can see in the different colors. Whatever he did, and another way he mentioned another procedure. Whatever he did, he mentioned something else here. Like, simply don't just go and copy from the already published paper that, okay, my objective and his objective is okay, my area is different, so my work is okay, so I will just copy. Maybe he used some sentences which is not belong to your work. Like recently, one paper which I not included here, he put some references that I use this and this references for the identification of different species, but those species were even not present in that article. So I ask a simple question that if these species are not in your article, then why you mention this in methodology? So you should be very careful about the methodology. Like major and trace elements. Major is not elements, major is mostly oxides. But he mentioned similar thing here. These are blunders, basically. So we should avoid these kind of mistake in our research article. And another thing, like sometimes we are just writing our methodology and we use the different method, but we just combinedly write in one, 2 or 3 paragraphs and once under one section. This is not a very good way to describe your methodology. So I will give an example from my own paper. You can see I gave this subsection, and every methodology, every material is discussed. So there is no confusion, no repetition, no contradiction. So this is the best way to do your, and if you read the paper of any good journal, so you will find in this way. One another thing, you can put even some methodologies, and if it is too much discussion, so you can put in the supplementary material, supplementary text. I told you one thing, the validation of your study, the validation of your result. This is the part of methodology. Like this is one of my some result which is not published, but I put this in the supplementary material. But I prove that my results are okay, that have no problem. So it's the part of the secondary information, but I prove it in my methodology. Result, again very important, the structure of the result. It must be in a specific way. You cannot discuss like one result which need to be in a number 1 and you discuss in a number 2. So it should be in a proper structure. And in the result, you don't need to explain everything. What is your key findings? Just explain that. If something is important, you want to publish it, you can publish that in the supplementary information. Describe the data analysis. Simply describe it in the result. Don't argue in the result. Don't assume the thing in your results. Just describe your result, whatever whatever your result is. Present the figure and tables. Very important thing. Where you need the table and where you need the figure. My personal suggestion is that we never don't need, if we have a figure which represents some data and it is quite clear, so we don't need to make a table of it. And if we have tables, so we don't need to again discuss that data in the text. So we should keep these 3 things separate. It should be not repetition of each one another. We can describe some result, and the figure should be representation of that. And if there is some qualitative data, so it should be in the tables. Another thing, address the unexpected finding, the key findings, the same one, maintain the objectivity. Don't go from your objectives to another place. Focus whenever you are representing your results, so focus on your objectives. Or what objectives you are discussing these, describing these results. Transition to discussion. I told you don't put your assumptions here. Just describe your result and make a transition between the result and discussion, and avoid the repetition. It should be not repetitive. This is again the same. I reviewed this paper. So they describe some result here, but it have no meaning. It like range from this to this. So what it telling us, the result mean to represent your the findings. What it tell us. So this is very important, that we should describe our result in productive way. That what it telling us, then we will come to discussion and we will discuss it. I'm concluding my presentation quickly because it's almost 45 minutes. Like these are the examples you can see. You can see the data here. This is one kind of representation of the result. And another person, he represented in this kind of. He did some analysis. He represented in a kind of figure. This is another one. This is the Nature Index paper. I saw a lot of paper. which is published in the local journal in T4 and even some very low level journal, the same data is here. The data is not different. The same isotopes and the same data is here. And this is freely available data. But that person, what he did, he just did the good representation and good use of the results, and he published in the Nature Index. Like this is the data. He converted this data into this one, and then here he filtered it, and the final result he represented here, and he converted some very normal data into age. So representation of data is very important in the result. Discussion. In the most of the paper, when I saw the authors combined result and discussion, so majority and up to 95% journals not encourage this way. And a reviewer, I think so 99 or 100% they not encourage this way to combine your result and discussion. Sometime in the Nature and Science and the Nature Index journal, here is combined result and discussion, but the result are separately published in the supplementary material. This is why they combine here result and discussion. But normally we should separate the result and discussion. Discussion is the main thing. What we are doing in our discussion section, we link the findings to the research question, that what was the research gave, what is our finding, and what it's telling us about that. So we should link these both, our findings and the research question, the research gave, and compare the contrast with the existing literature. So a lot of references are there in our discussion section. Why? Because we are compare it with already existing knowledge, that what is the difference, what we are adding, what is new with us. So one thing we discuss in the introduction, that we have find the research gap, but another thing we are directly doing in the discussion, not in the results. In the result, we are telling with the references, with the evidences, that what is adding this data to the already existing knowledge. So discussion is very, very important. Address the limitation in future directions. How we will define the limitation with the previously existing knowledge, and the future direction, what is already present, what we did, and what we can do in future. Some recommendation, how we can further improve this. Synthesize and conclude. We should conclude it. Without conclusion, the discussion is not useful. In my opinion, we should conclude our every paragraph at the end, 2 or 3 sentences, like what is existing knowledge, what is our result, what it's telling us about, what is the conclusion of this, is good, bad, whatever. No repetition of methodology and the result without proper outcome. If there is some need of the methodology, if your work is, your research is experimental research, then you can repeat the methodology, you can tell us about the methodology. Sometime we need it because our research is basically focused on the methodology. So you can discuss something, otherwise you cannot discuss the methodology. Again and again here, because I saw some in some paper, like they have maybe no enough literature, so he just again and again discussed the methodology in the discussion section, because he have a lot of references, so it's looking like very good, because you have a lot of reference and discussion, so it's very powerful discussion. No, you should not repeat the methodologies and other thing here in this discussion. And every argument must have some appropriate references. You cannot say like there is no water on the moon without any reference. You should provide some reference. Then you can say something from your findings, and then you can conclude. Discussion is the most important thing, and I would suggest you that try to write down your results and discussion separate. Don't mix it. Like this is the one of the example you can see, and this person discussed this is the discussion section, but there is no reference, and he almost discuss again the result. This is another, again, he discussed the results. There's no discussion, no arguments, no previous literature, no comparison with the previous literature or existing knowledge. This is, I took one screenshot from one of the paper. It's published in the Marine Geology. You can see this, at every sentence there is the reference of the data, my data, and then you can see the previous literature argument, the references. So you were like here you can see the data plus the previous literature. So this is very important for the your paper and as well as for your thesis. Recently, one of the students, I will not mention the student, his thesis just rejected by supervisor and not pursued for the review because he believed, the supervisor was believing that the discussion is not strong. And this was his second year in extension in PhD. So discussion is very important. Conclusion is also very important part of the research. Some journal have conclusion, some don't have. Like Nature Index and Nature Science, they don't have conclusion sections. But some journal, most of the journal have the conclusion. So you should, the conclusion doesn't mean that you discuss your methodology, your results in each and everything here in the conclusion. Generally, we are doing like this. This is not the conclusion. Conclusion is your key finding, that what is your conclusion, what you concluded from this study. It may be 4 or 5 points, not more than this. What is the limitations and what you found good in your research. The key points, just a small background in 2-3 sentences, and then come to the points. 4 or 5, maybe up to 6 is okay. This is the conclusion from one of the paper, and I reviewed for one of the journal and I rejected. Not because of the conclusion, because of the other issues. But you can see this is just the text, and again he discussing the result and each and everything here. This is one of my paper published in the T1. You can see just a small background, and then in 5 points I just describe my findings. This is a very lengthy paper, but just in 5 points I concluded. So conclusion is not the summary of your entire paper, that this is my methodology and this was the result and this was in the discussion and now this and that. No, just the key findings of your research. Abstract I put in the last. Sometime I saw like many of the students just starting from the abstract, which is not a proper way. Abstract is the last part of the research article or thesis. When you finalize each and everything, then you will write your abstract, because you can make a lot of changes in the different part of your research, in the findings and your conclusion in many places. So it should be the last part of the element. I will also further suggest and clarify that introduction, like in introduction we can write up a rough introduction, but introduction should be also not in the beginning of the paper. We can define our research gap and methodology, each and everything in a rough draft, but we will finalize our introduction when we write our conclusion. Similarly, the title is the last point of the research, but you can keep a tentative title in your mind. So abstract should be the last part of your research. It must be concise and summarize. So this is the difference between the abstract and conclusion. Abstract is the summary of our research. Conclusion is the findings of our research. So you here should summarize your research. You should, in 1 or 2 lines, just a broad scope and background of your research. Then come to the research problem in 1 sentence. Then research objective maybe in 1 sentence or 2 sentences. Then the key results, not all the results, and if any limitation, if there's any material and method is important to mention, and the last 1 to 2 sentences you just concluded the significances of that work, what it will add to the already existing knowledge. You should avoid the references, citation in the abstract, and it must be, for the paper, it must be from, I mentioned 250 to 300, but some journal like AUG journals, they require 200. Even they don't accept 201, just 200. So keep it as summarized and concise as possible. But for the thesis, it is conditional. For thesis, it's according to your department, your supervisor. So it is better to write down a detailed abstract of every chapter and combine it like a journal background, and then one by one, 200, 300 words for every chapter. So for the thesis, a little bit different. But the overall structure of the abstract is same. In every abstract, either whether it's for the paper or for thesis, you should follow the same structure. This is one of my abstract. You can see in the first 3 lines I just mentioned some background, then the research gap, then materials, then methods, and then my results and conclusion. This is a very important thing I'm telling you, that last time in the last year in the same month I presented here, and I keep the same slides here for the difference between the research article and thesis. Still, many of the master students especially, and maybe some PhD, but the master especially students, they are stuck between the research article and thesis. I saw a lot of students, they published T2, T3, some good papers, but they failed their thesis review. So there is a difference between both. So what is that difference? Let's discuss it quickly, and then we will finish it. You just look to this picture, that how much is the difference between the research thesis and the research article. The number one thing which we start the purpose. The research thesis purpose is to graduate it and get your degree. And research article you can publish at any stage of your life. Like I published my first paper when I was undergraduate student. I did internship, and the owner of the company allowed me to do, you can work on that data. So I came and I take the help of one and another, and the paper was rejected a lot of times, and then I was sending again and again, and finally I published that paper. So that paper doesn't mean that I am eligible for the PhD during my undergraduate studies. So the paper, the scope of the paper is very, very small compared to the thesis. Thesis is a very big scope, especially for the PhD and master student. The thesis is a very big scope. The scope and depth, like the thesis, is very detailed analysis, very detailed study. Paper is not that much detailed study. In the paper you can, like, if there is some problem already existed, you just put some small improvement to that already existing knowledge, you can publish your paper. But you cannot in the thesis, especially in the PhD. Sometimes even we doing some case studies, like we are just change our position, like place the region. One work is available in China, we are doing the same work in Pakistan, and we publish our paper. There is no difference, there is no addition of knowledge. It is the same thing, but just we change our area. We can publish the paper, but you cannot do this thing in the thesis. Thesis need a very detailed work. It may be the combination of many papers. originality in contribution, as I told you right now, that if there may be a small addition to the work and maybe no addition, you can publish your paper. Sometimes there is no novelty in your paper, but you can publish it published because the reviewer not make that point. But in your thesis, at any stage of your life, it can come out, especially in PhD. So the originality and contribution of both is very different. Like you can just publish a paper on a single map, but you cannot do PhD on that one paper. I will give you an example. If you publish a paper in Nature or Science, which is the elite journals, if you submit the same work, you cannot get even a master degree, because this is very limited information and limited structure and number of words. You need to do a detailed work in your thesis. Audience and publication publications. This is I think so typing mistake. The audience are different. Like I work in marine sciences, I have expertise in the remote sensing. I can publish, but it doesn't mean that it will fulfill my requirement for my degree. The audience are different. Like you can publish a paper for the specific people, like a specific journal, specific field, but your thesis is basically the aim of your thesis that everyone can read it. It should be in detail and depth. The importance and impact, I explained you already. The importance of a paper is not that much as your thesis, because your thesis is the combination of too many papers. You can get your degree by your thesis, not by your paper. This is just a requirement that, yeah, you did some work, okay, you publish it, you already have the thesis. If you don't have the thesis, you have a lot of papers, so you will not get your degree. You will get your degree when you have thesis and then you have a paper. Just quickly, this is the same slide, I keep it here again, the research ethics. This is the basic principle of the research, which should we adopt in our research. Let me move to the next slide. These are the things which we should avoid, because this is against the research ethics. Data publication, plagiarism, similarity index is another kind of name that we are using. It is different, but we are using. Authorship change, data falsification, conflict of interest, non-disclosure, safety procedure. These are a lot of things. You can see I will share this PPT and group. But we should avoid these things. If we adopted some data from someone, so we must be acknowledge that. Like recently I was reviewing one paper for a very good journal, and the author never acknowledged. He presented maybe 6-7 figures which was adopted from the previous work. It was okay, there was no problem, but he not acknowledge it. So this is very important thing that you should acknowledge. So this is also very important that we should mention it. So this was all from my today presentation. I hope you get some knowledge. Now I'm over to Kashif.
Thank you, Dr. Masood, for your very comprehensive and informative lecture, how to publish high quality papers and pass your thesis review. Your lecture was very comprehensive and very informative. I note some points which are very, very important, especially for master students and doctor students. Number first is your research should be systematic. Some students try analysis from the beginning. You should not be hurried. First, maybe 6 months or even 1 year, try to read some literature and come up with a novel idea. And the second is multidisciplinary approach. Like for example, Dr. Masood just mentioned that some student may be very expert in the geology, but like for example, other students may be from computer science, which can use machine learning, deep learning, and other students can use remote sensing for the spatial temporal representation of your research. So this is very, very important. So thank you, Dr. Masood. Please clap for Dr. Masood. Thank you very much. So now the hall is open for question answer sessions. So anyone have question, please raise your hand. Anyone have question? Okay.
Thank you, Doctor, for your good presentation. Sometimes when I read some paper, I want to know the difference between background and literature review. I have some confusion on it. The difference between background research and literature review. I want to know. Thank you.
It's working? Okay. Background and literature review. These are basically the same thing in the two different aspects. One is, first of all, you will do the literature review. How to do literature review? This is very comprehensive topic, especially for the beginners. But you should start from the latest research, like what is your field, and then you will go to the previous literature by year. There's very easy way how to do the literature review. How to do the literature review. Like if you started from the paper which is published in the 2024, that paper cited a lot of paper from 2023 and others. Where you point, we note a very specific point related to your work, you can go and download another paper. And then you can go like from one to another. So you can go from one to another, step by step. No charge. So you can go from one to another one. This is another option in the Science Direct and even in every journal website. If you go there and you write down your keywords, so there is in the left side there is option in which year you want the paper from these keywords. So you can select 2024 or from 20 to 2024. So you can download related papers. Then you have to read out these papers. You will read a lot of paper. One thing I'm telling you, if you are a master or PhD student, so the literature reviewer find a research gap, it's not a work of 10 or 20 papers. And one more important thing, that not irrelevant papers. Like anyone like me, for example, someone is in the marine sciences and he is studying every paper published in marine sciences. No. What is your objective? What is in your mind? What your professor is doing? What is your mindset at what I will do? So just related those papers. When you study a lot of paper, so your focus must be two things, the important things, methodology, and another one is the introduction part. That what they introduce, what is the research problem in one paper, another paper, another paper, another paper, and what methodologies they adopted. These are two important things. Then you will come to the next stage, that you study a lot of paper from like I did in my master. I studied at that time, I was in 2015. I started one of my the paper of my supervisor who published, and I went to 1927, the Davis, very famous paper of Davis. I was going back and I read the last paper in 1927 when that specific species was discovered for the first time. So I study a lot of literature, and then I have a mindset that where is the research gap, where I can do the work, which was previously not performed. So now what is the difference between the literature review and background? That whatever I studied during my all the study, this is literature review. Now if you are writing this, so you will write this in detail, maybe 1 page, 2 pages according to your requirement. This is literature review. The work you did, this is literature review. What is your right? This is literature review. Now background. Some specific and key findings from the previous literature presented in one paragraph or some few sentences, that is background. So this is the difference between the background and thesis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. Anyone? Your question? Please raise your hand. Please give him the mic.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Maksud. Can you explain that where we have to put the research gap or the problem statement in the introduction section if I'm writing a paper or thesis?
In the introduction, as I told you, that first of all should start from the background. As another friend asked the question, so we should first introduce the background. And the background, we have two kind of backgrounds within the one background. Like when is the broader one, then we will come to the regional scale, and then after that we will put our research gap, because after the background we will identify there is the research gap in the previous work. So you will put our research gap, then objectives. Objectives are very important, that it must be immediately after the research gap. This is the gap, and this what we are doing to fill this gap.
Any question? Please.
Thank you, Dr. Masood. Because I have been hearing this from you, also from the past presentations that we got from you about novelty. So the definition of novelty you have been telling us, for me, it looks a bit strict. So I have some questions on that, because you are focusing on uniqueness and the state of being new, pioneering. I agree, actually. So if we stick with the actual definition of novelty like that, then we wouldn't have the publication that we have in the academia. So my question is, how do you see, for example, applying conventional methods in an area where it hasn't been applied before, for example, and also updating the science, like including recent time or recent years in my, for example, in my research, like updating the existing body of knowledge. So how do you tell us this thing in terms of contribution? Thank you.
Thank you so much. A good question. As I understand your question, that by the general definition of the novelty, that it should be unique and adding something else. And if you are just stuck with the concept of the novelty, so you will not publish the academics paper. I think so. This was your question. It is not like this. Some theorists, I told you, every work have their own scope. Like I told you, some we can publish even the work in some case studies as well. There is nothing new thing, but you just change the area and you just publish the paper. This is why I told you this is the difference between the thesis and paper as well. Now, the novelty we can find. I put one slide that enhance the novelty. That was very important. Like if there is some work is available and previously someone did it, and I have all the resources that I can do the same work, but there is no novelty. I'm not adding something. So how you will make the novelty? This is an important question. So I told you how to enhance the novelty: multidisciplinary approach, interdisciplinary approach, the way of interpretations. Like if I go back to one of my slides here, this one, I told you this is the sample data. Here this is just some sample data, and this data is publicly available on IUDP websites. And this data was already published in the form of a report by IUDP, International Ocean Drilling Program. They already published it. But how he published this work, the same work, in the Nature Index journal, Earth and Planetary Science later, he enhanced the novelty. He put the novelty. How? This curve was already published, but he converted this curve into this one by using R package. He applied some algorithms. Then he used some filters, and after passing these filters, he converted this sample data, numerical data, into ages. So this is the thing, the important thing, and how you will enhance the novelty and how you will put the novelty. Otherwise, this work was already in the same way. It was already published, already in the PALM-UP result, in the PALM-UP report. The curve was there, the result was there. But what he did, he used a multidisciplinary approach. He used another field out of the geosciences. He went and used some computer softwares, computer programming, and he changed that numerical data into ages. So this is the important thing. And another thing I will tell you, this is my suggestion. Sometime already some work is already done in one area, and we are doing the same. No, we don't need that. We should put these data in the references, and we should do something, another one, which is the addition to the already existing data. But it need one thing. It need a little bit struggle to read some literature and learn some more methodologies. Like normally in the geosciences, we are not too much familiar with the machine learning, R package, algorithm, no. But if you learn it, you will see in everything novelty. Even you can publish from the other data which is already published, you can publish a lot of paper. So I think so we should need to enhance the novelty. It's important. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Masood, and thank you, Doctor, for the very good question. Anyone? Next question? Okay, I think there is no more questions, so we will conclude our Silk Forum. Thank you all again very much for coming. Have a good evening. Okay, we have a group picture.